Ellie, Ellie Sipperstein, and my best friend.
Zipperstein Paints things.
Sipperstein Paints, and I have a lot of stores and everything. And we've remained friends all these years. And my best friend Florence, I met her when I was 10, and we're still in touch with each other. I don't find that happened with New Yorkers or people that were in the suburbs. Bayonne has such a small Jewish community that they sort of stayed together. And my graduating class in high school at Bayonne High only had 250 people in it. So it was really a small class, and we knew each other. It was divided up into different groups, but we knew each other.
So what was it like going to school in those days?
It was nice. You had good teachers and bad teachers. The only time I think growing up I felt anti-Semitism was in the 4th grade.
I remember this one.
I had a teacher named Miss Wasco, and she wanted to know who was not going to be in the following week because there were Jewish holidays, you know. And I raised my hand, and about 4 other kids raised their hands. Oh, so you're Jewish? I didn't think you were Jewish. I don't know why I didn't think you were Jewish. She said to each one as though to be Jewish was a terrible thing. I really didn't think you were Jewish. And that was the first inkling I had of anti-Semitism.
Is this the same teacher who told you, well, that's not a real holiday, so I'm not going to let you off?
Right.
How did that go?
She said, in our books, Jewish holiday is not on the calendar. So if you take it, you're absent. That was it. You're absent. We don't acknowledge it.
And Sue, had you ever,
Yes,
at a young age, experienced anti-Semitism?
Yes, I had anti-Semitism. I had a teacher, Miss Kelly,
Yeah.
and she was in either junior high or the first year in high school. And Gladys Kelly was her name. And she used to preach to the kids. She was a bookkeeping teacher. That they should remember that all the Jews are very rich. And they're all in businesses, and they're very rich. And if there's a Jewish person in the sitting here in the class, you should know that she's very rich.
Wow.
Yeah, and
What grade was this?
She said in junior high.
In junior high?
Yeah, either the 9th or the 10th.
What was the teacher used to tell you that you'd make a blood boil?
Oh yeah, but that's a different one. And I went home and told that to my father. And why does she say that all the people are very rich? Are we rich? You know. And he said, no, she's not supposed to do that. I think I ought to report her to the principal. And I told him no, because she'll know that it was I who lynched on her, you know. But that's the only anti-Semitism I felt with a teacher in that school. And as far as friends are concerned, I made very steadfast friends whom I met in the junior high or elementary school. And to this day, we're still in contact and we know each other. And we're very close friends. So so like Fee said, it's a small community. And if you liked somebody and they became your friend, you were a friend.
Now, how about high school? Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, in high school, I had these same friends as I'm talking about, and we had a very nice and innocent time growing up. As we were growing up, we would learn to dance and go to we either danced in the basement or in the living room, and we'd get together with boys and girls.
They called them socials.
Yeah, social night, yeah. And it was usually Saturday night, and the parents were always home, and they would, I know in my house, my mother would make chocolate pudding or Jell-O or ice cream, and that's what the boys would have, and then they'd go home. And as I once addressed Scott's class and told him that remember that?
I'll tell you when you tell what it was.
That Scott volunteered my name to his teacher in a social studies class, and the subject was find out from your grandparents how it was when they were growing up as teenagers, you know. So Scott told me that, is it all right, Grandma, I gave your name. Anyway, the teacher called me that night and he said, is it okay if you come to address the class? And so I did. And what I told them was what I'm telling you now. Telephone calls were a nickel. Subway rides and bus rides were a nickel, right?
Yep.
We'd go to the movies for
A nickel?
a nickel
10 cents, I
or
think
a
it
quarter.
was maybe
And
10
if you
cents.
went on a Wednesday, you would get
Free dish.
a free dish so that you can gather a whole set.
A dish like a saucer? Like,
Yes,
Yeah,
it did
yeah,
like,
like
Yeah,
a
one day it
serving,
was
you
a
know.
cup and one day it was a dish.
it wasn't
and
for
one-
the kids, excuse me, it was for the adults to come at
Yeah.
night. So my mother collected a whole, she'd go to the movies
That's
once
how
a
they
week.
used to
You
fill
know.
the kitchen.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. And it was very nice.
Were pool halls places were bad places? Were like
What, the what?
were pool halls bad social places?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no,
then it
no, my
wasn't
mother,
nice.
no.
No, he
Pool-
said the pool houses.
Yeah,
At
pool
that
houses.
time, they were frowned
At
upon.
that time, my mother associated, right or wrong, she used to say that a pool house
Like a
is
billiard-
like,
billiard house.
yeah,
Yeah.
billiard house. Because of the word house or parlor, she associated with like the mafia must go there,
wow.
you know?
Uh-huh.
The same thing, she wouldn't let us go to a pizza parlor because it was called Pizza Parlor. And she
I
thought that,
didn't know that.
yeah, and did you ever have pizza in
Sure, sure, not in our house.
No.
But I had it out on dates.
I never did.
So what were dates like? Where'd you go
Yeah.
to the pool or what'd you do?
The first time I had.
I never went to a pool place.
No, what'd you go?
No,
where'd you go on dates?
a date. What was it like to date in those days? You don't have to give us any names or
Well,
anything.
it's different.
You get
It's
It's
milkshakes.
5 years makes a difference, you know?
Well,
Right?
and Sue, first tell us
All
what
right,
it was
let's
like for
Sue
you,
talk
and then
about
I
that.
Grandma.
didn't date till I was probably last in not even in junior high. First part in high school. And I remember I had a date with a guy who had a car, at that time it was a Hudson, you know, and they had a rumble seat in the back.
What's a rumble seat?
A
With a
convertible.
seat in the back, you
A
open
seat
it
in
up.
the back, you
come
open
out
up
of the trunk.
like where the
Okay.
trunk is, you know? And when the
Like a
guy
jump seat.
came to pick me up, my mother looked through the window and she said, I don't want you to see him anymore. She didn't even meet him. So I said, why? She said, because he drives a selfish car. Selfish, what does that mean?
Tell me yourself.
Huh? I told you that. A selfish means that you either take one person who sits along to the driver, but you can't take a mother and you can't take a sister. You can't take anybody else.
take the rest
It's
of
a
the
selfish
family.
car. You can't.
You could get two in a rumble seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she didn't even know what
I
went
used
on
to
in the
ride the
rumble
rumble
seat.
seat a lot. As long
Yeah,
as
right.
Well, and Sue, what places did you go to? Did you go to movies or?
Yeah, we went to a place called the Alpine Inn. It was in Alpine, New Jersey, and later it became the first place where Sinatra sang. And there was another place called Bill Martin's something or other.
Riviera.
Riviera.
Oh, yeah, that was very
across
famous.
the bridge, yeah. But everybody went home after they took you home. You went home. You said good night, and also Saturday nights we would go to the Jersey City Jewish Y and do dancing.
Israeli dancing? Or-
No. Ballroom dance.
No, ballroom
Waltzing
dancing.
and-
Yeah.
Like what sort of, Grandma, Aunt Sue, I know you taught me the box step. Is that the sort of
Yeah, that's
dance
the
you
kind
did?
of a thing, yeah. The box step or
Box
waltz. Yeah, and to add some levity to this, I had a friend called Ethel Feldman, who had a brother, Bernie Feldman, who was very tall and thin. The longest legs you ever saw, but he liked to dance with me. So he'd come over to me, pull me out, and his legs were so long that he'd dance over, like at the dance floor, and I'd be running after him. And I'd say, Bernie, wait, I can't keep up with
Sue
you.
used to do the black bottom and
The
Well,
Charleston.
the Charleston,
yeah, Charleston.
Wow.
Good at that.
Can we see a demonstration of that
Not
maybe?
right now, honey.
Oh no, right now, not right now, not at the Thanksgiving dinner, but
No,
Yeah.
no.
now, Grandma B, could you tell us what dating was like for you?
Fun.
Like, where did you go? What did you do?
Oh, well,
You don't have to
we,
get
we
too
started,
specific.
no, in junior high, we'd have dances at school, in the gym, you know, like once a month or something. And as I told you, a lot of the kids knew each other. It was really fun. And then in high school, you got more serious about dating. I mean, you dated, usually double dated, you know? You'd go to a movie and now pizza. The first time I had pizza, I think I went with Herbie Steinberg, and
I
he
never
had a
had
sense of
pizza.
humor. What?
I never had pizza.
He had a sense of humor, and I wasn't that sophisticated. And the waitress came over and she said, "What would you like?" He said, "Well, what other kind of pies do you have?" And she looked at him. She said, "What do you mean? What other kind of pies?" He said, "Well, apple, strawberry, anything like that." She said, "This is a pizza parlor, you know." He did it to be funny, but she didn't have a sense of humor. She said, "You're in the wrong place, you know." But I had a crush or
was his
two
name?
on different boys.
Did
They
he?
had a crush on me, and it was great.
What was his name?
Herbie Steinberg was the one that
Every
said that.
guy
Every guy was Herbie.
Oh, I'll tell you what dating was like. We'd go away for the summer when I was about 14 or 15, right? We went to, Saul was born, he was a baby, and we went to the bungalow in Kerhonkson. And I met Herbie Goldman, okay?
See, another
Yeah,
idea.
he came from Newark. He didn't have a car, he couldn't drive, and I was from Bayonne, and we saw each other during the summer. And Aunt Fran was living with us then, and when Herbie wanted to come by, he was shy, so he'd keep walking by the bungalow, I remember this, and he'd whistle a couple of times until I heard him. But if I didn't hear him, Fran would say, "There's your boyfriend, he's out there whistling again." Anyway, what happened, what I remember about him, he was 16, I was 15, right?
What, honey?
He was a good humor after school on Saturdays, he sold good humor. But
Ice cream.
that's ice cream. But they had like the little wagons. He'd sit in a wagon, you know, and he couldn't drive. They didn't have a truck. So he asked to be stationed at the Hudson County Park, you know. So they'd pick him up in a truck and put this little push cart in front of him and drop him off at the park in Bayonne, Hudson County. And I'd walk over with my friends and we'd get free good humors. That I remember. That was like the kind of date. And it was fun dating. It was fun growing up in Bayonne in high school. I
Were all the
would
boys
tell you.
polite and held doors?
What?
And all the boys
Chivalry.
polite?
Most of them were nice.
Yeah, they
Most
were
of them.
nice.
And the ones that weren't, you didn't see again.
Now, I
I
don't
mean,
mean.
if they made a move on you, you didn't see again.
I hate to
What?
backtrack, but I think it's important. I don't think it should be left out. I remember Aunt Sue told me a very pointed story about the Depression.
Yeah.
And I was
about my
wondering,
friend.
yeah, and about your friend. And I was
You know,
wondering if you
about
could just
her.
elaborate on
Yeah.
that a little bit.
See, that's why I said 5 years made a difference at that time. You know, it really did. Because I graduated 39. You graduated in what, 34, 33?
34, I think.
Okay. And that was like the height of the Depression. By 39, we were sort of approaching war, and I never knew. I mean, we weren't that sophisticated, but it was an easier living, I
34,
think, in
yeah,
39
right.
than
Yes.
in 34. You know,
Now, during the Depression, when it
Clouds
hit,
of
the
war
boys, yeah,
really,
and the
shaded
boys had
everything.
some money, I guess, a little bit. They had jobs, so we went
it
out.
hurt, it struck the population very badly because it was also, you've read the Okies, about the Okies, the dust,
Grapes of Wrath.
the grapes of wrath, first of all, so there were no jobs out west. Everybody
Michelle?
went to the west because there were no jobs in the east. When they got to the west, it was very hard to find, to make a
They
living.
try to
Ask
keep
the
you
police,
out
please.
because they didn't want everybody coming in and taking their job.
Yeah.
Shepherd, what's
So so it was very hard. Now, when the
Yeah.
Depression came, the first industry that was hit was the building trade. And my friends, this particular man, Myrtle's father, my friend Myrtle, she was a very lovely girl, but they were very poor because her father had no job.
He was a construction worker?
He was a carpenter, you know, and when there were no building jobs, you know, that was the first industry that went kaput. So the government started a WPA project where they gave people apples to sell on the corner, you know.
Do you guys know what WPA was for?
Yeah.
What was it?
What was it? Was he at the stand for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Works Progress Administration.
Yeah,
Works
Works
Progress.
Progress Administration. I kept saying
That's
War
right.
Powers Act.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. So so on many corners, you would see people selling apples, you know, 5 cents an apple or 3 cents an
Right.
apple. And the money that they made, I think they kept, I don't know if they had
Yeah.
to give it back to the government. Well, Myrtle and I were walking back from school one day, and on the corner, she lived on 24th Street, I lived on 22nd Street. So when we walked back from 29th Street,
Bayonne.
in Bayonne, yeah, I saw her father on the corner of maybe 25th Street, you know, selling the apples. And I knew she was very embarrassed about that, you know. So I pretended that I didn't see her father, and I continued to walk. But she
Thank you.
stopped, you know, not facing me, and I didn't face her, but I got the impression that if there was a hole in the ground, she would have jumped in. You know, she was
Yeah,
just
she
so
was shocked.
embarrassed, yeah. And then she caught up with me. I kept walking, she caught up with me, and to this day, I never told her that I saw her father, but I'm sure she knows that I did. But that's how you know, now, fortunately, my father got a job in 1928 with the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company as an agent. So although we weren't rich, but at least there was a steady income of $28 a week. I want to tell you, that's how I knew he was hired at $28 a week, and they thought at that time that was very good. Our rental at the time was $22 a month. And so it was really, you know, pretty good. But at $28 a week, my father and mother managed to buy a Graham Page car, for which they paid $8,000 and then ultimately paid it out. You know, I'm just telling you this.
You mean $800?
Yeah, $800. That
You
was the
said
first
1,000.
car. I'm sorry. That was the first car.
That was an expensive car.
Yeah, 800. Yeah, well, if they
He
were
needed
making
it for business.
$28,
Could
but
get
he,
a Ford for $600.
I know, he needed it for
He
business.
he needed it for work, you know. So in our house,
Student
now,
rate.
I'll give you an idea. My mother used to tell me, because I was the oldest girl there, my mother used to tell me, if anybody asks you why Papa has a car, it's because he needs it for work. In other words, she was embarrassed
Yeah,
with
right.
all the riches with an $800 car, you know, but nobody on our street had a car.
Could
So
buy a
she,
house for $6,000.
yes, and they bought their first house for $6,000, a two-family house. So, you know, that's how, the young people now
Can't
can't
even buy a
equate
car for
that.
Right.
that.
Can't.
Now,
You can't equate the,
Think of it.
you know, the
Jesus.
money part with it.
we were eating our Thanksgiving dinner on a very significant tablecloth. Can you tell us a little bit about this tablecloth?
No, Beal
This
have to tell you that.
tablecloth, I think, is an heirloom, and it'll go to the one that deserves it. I don't know who it is, okay? But my mother-in-law, Harry's mother, and Harry's Aunt Rose, who he adored, used to do this kind of work in Europe, making cloth, you know, embroidering for the rich people. And when they were here, and they said they would embroider a cloth for me, I went to Gertz, which was a business then, and they said, get a Madeira cloth, because that's the kind of embroidery we do. And I bought this cloth, and they used to sit, and while they watched television, you remember Aunt Rose and Grandma Gilbert, they would sit, one would take one end and one would take the other, watch television and do this cloth. And it's just beautiful. It's worth a lot of money, I think.
This is all hand sewn?
All
All
hands on.
hand sewn. The bottom, I found out later, I think Katie Papel told me, that the bottom, I think, was finished, but you had to, like, get this part, and they did it. Isn't it beautiful?
Beautiful. Now, you wanted
And I
to
remember
know,
they used to cut lace, they used
Yeah.
to buy lace, and you had to be, everybody, to cut all the different
Along the
designs, so
designs,
that
they
the
were very
dresses and
handy at
different
that,
things.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, not.
Oh, is there more? There's more, and there's
And-
another
and
cup.
Sue, you were
The
saying-
men, that's,
There's cups-
the men weren't working, like Uncle
There's
Jaime, who was Rose's husband,
Coffee
he
in
was
the
always on
kitchen
strike.
too,
He was
different,
a
I
boss
think it's
painter.
Perky in the kitchen, either one.
And
Is
those
this
guys, every year they went
Is
on
there
strike.
fresh coffee? Yeah.
Oh.
And there's cookie.
And Sue, I had cut you off. I'm sorry. You were saying something?
I don't know, you were asking me questions.
You said you wanted to know about.
You were talking about the money.
No, yeah, told you how you can go out to eat now for $28, a good dinner, and you don't raise an eyebrow. And at that time, $28 a week, you raised
The
4
week's pay,
kids.
yeah, right.
You raised 4 kids, paid off a car,
Paid the
saved
rent.
enough money to maybe go buy a house. At $28 a week, now it's a luncheon.
Incidentally, I earned $28 a week when I first went to work in the parks, and I was single. I mean, I felt like a rich man.
Okay, so after high school, did you both go to college?
Me?
Did you go to college, Ansel?
No.
Or Grandma, you went to a.
I took the academic course hoping I could go to college, but there just wasn't enough, really, with the $28 a week
Okay.
or whatever.
Well,
So I did take a course after college at a secretarial school. I went for about a half year,
okay.
okay? And from that, I got a job in Maidenform.
How long did you work in Maiden for?
A couple of years.
What
Made
store?
good friends
Probably.
there.
What? First I started at Venetian Blind Company.
No.
Yeah.
For how much?
Oh, what did I start at Maidenform? $15 a week.
Wow.
Right?
And
when $15 a week.
$15.
Now, I
And Sue,
still,
right after high school, what did you
right
do?
after high school, it was very hard to find a job because we were really in the deep depression. So through my relatives in Staten Island, they got me a job through a friend of theirs for $10 a week. I had to go from Bayonne to Staten Island, which was 30 cents car fare each way. So 30 times 7 is $3.50 right there, right?
Yeah.
Out of the
Seven
$10 a week. Right. No, 6 days a week. 6
You
days.
want milk?
And I got the job in where they delivered oil, oil burning company. And I worked there for the first year for $10, and then I asked for 12, and I got it. And then, second year, I asked for 14. And he said, Sue, for 14, and I explained to him, it's costing me,
Yeah, with the
so
car
much
fare.
with the car fare and eating out, and I can't make it. He says, yeah, but I can't afford to pay more. And it's not my fault you're coming from Bayonne. He said, for $14, I can get 2 people. Like 2 women in the neighborhood, 2 girls in the neighborhood that don't have car fare. And I'll get 2 people to work, and that's what he did. So now I'm without a $12 job, right? I never did get the 14 from him. But when I went to an agency in New York, they said they had a $10 job in Jersey City, for a bookkeeper in Lydelia Company. So I took it because there at least the coffee was a nickel each way. And I worked there until,
They make lamps?
they make lamps.
That was a big company, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, right. And I remember working there, and I worked there 6 years until when I left, I was making $21, getting progressive raises. And things were looking up again. And then I got married at $21,
Okay.
and Saul was making $25.
Let me stop you there. How did you meet Uncle Saul?
I know, I'm gonna tell you how I met Uncle Saul. My mother and father brought up two nieces. My father's sister had died and left 3 kids, but my
What were their names?
Aunt Fran, you know her as Aunt Fran, Aunt Seal,
And Sarah.
and Seri. Now, Seal was 3 years older than I. Fran was my age.
No. I'm
Maybe
not
he's talking to
listening
me,
to you.
sorry.
Oh,
All right,
okay.
it's still rolling.
Yeah, and Bee's and
Seri
Seri
was
was
Bee's
her
age.
her age. So Seri was brought up by an aunt who was childless, and they lived in the Bronx, and my Uncle Joe, whom you referred to before, he was a very decent fellow, and my father and mother promised him that his children will not go to an orphanage, but they'll bring up the girls.
His wife died when Sari was 3.
Yeah. And so they did. So naturally, I regarded and felt like Fran and Seal were like sisters to me. You know, we all lived in the same house. But when Seal was 16, my uncle wanted the girls to be back in the Bronx and the whole family, you know, with the younger sister and so forth. So he got an apartment and the girls went back there. But every Sunday, every weekend, I would go to the Bronx. I was 16. And and it was Fran's 16th birthday in March. And she had a bunch of, people that she went to high school with. She had a 16 party, sweet 16 party. And I met a nice guy there called Lou Fishman. And I saw him for a while, and he didn't seem to be deterred by the fact that I lived in Bayonne, because he had a friend, Saul Gilbert, who had a car. And he would always ask Saul Gilbert to come out to Bayonne with a bunch of boys, and I would get the girls.
But he would come out by bus too. Remember?
No, Lou used to come, yeah. So Lou, when he came out alone, would come out to see me, And he was a nice, kind guy, a four-flusher, but a nice, kind guy.
A what?
What does that mean?
Four-flusher.
He wanted to brag a lot,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Fore, F-O-R-E,
Floor,
F-L.
F-L-O-O-R.
Oh, floor flusher.
No, 4.
No.
F-O-U-R.
F-O-U-R.
Yeah.
Like 4
F-O-U-R.
flush.
Like flush,
Yes,
like
right.
a
Oh, four
Yeah.
flush, okay.
In other words, you don't have 5 cars, you only have 4.
Okay.
And you're a flusher.
Could I interject something for a minute
Yes.
about this four-flusher? He was really crazy about your
It was
Aunt
really a
Sue.
nice guy.
Nice guy. And to
Even his
ingratiate
boss that he
himself,
stole from
he
Mike.
tried to win his way to her heart by being nice to me and Saul and Rita.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he always heard me ask my mother for a dog, and my mother didn't want to get me one.
Wow, this sounds really familiar. I'm hearing Kate asking
Yeah.
for a dog.
And he comes out by bus and takes the cutest little puppy out of his pocket that he brought, a dog for me. You named it Piffle, I think. Piffle, yeah. A little puppy this big. And we had it for, I just want to tell you how parents sometimes are
But I
two-faced.
digress.
Yeah, my mother didn't want me to have a dog. He brought the dog and she wasn't gonna embarrass him, so I had the dog for a while. And my mother couldn't stand it because it was making all over, So
What's the name?
she said one day, I go to the grocery store and they really need a dog because they have, I don't know, mice or whatever. And she said, and it would be a good thing if you gave this lady the dog. Oh, I cried, but we gave the lady the dog. My mother goes to the store one day, and the dog sees her, the little puppy, runs out and starts lapping, tying her, untying her shoes. I mean, really getting crazy because he saw my mother. My mother started to cry, and she said, maybe I made a mistake and gave the dog away. First she didn't want me to have it, but she cried, she came home crying, why did I give that dog away? He was so cute. That's what I remembered. And he also brought my brother Saul a bike on the bus.
Oh wow.
He was trying to ingratiate himself to get to Sue.
Now, how did Aunt Sue your interests go from this
From Lou.
four-flusher
Yeah.
to
Saul.
Uncle Saul?
Yeah.
That's a
Now,
long story.
it just happened that my folks thought he was kind of decent because he did show a lot of attention, you know, trying to ingratiate himself. Somehow I did not trust him.